Thank you, Your Worship and members of council, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, there are a lot of questions that were answered today with respect to road safety, but also there are really good questions with respect to the two-way left turn lane, and I'd like to maybe answer some of those. So what I'd like to do is give you this opportunity for me to be able to provide a little bit on road safety when it comes to cyclists, but also when it comes to motorists. One, cyclists for bike lanes, or even not even bike lanes, because of course all roadways have the opportunity for everybody to share the road, not even cyclists, but even pedestrians. And also motorists with respect to the two-way left turn lane. The two-way left turn lane, why did we put it in? Well, one of the reasons is it reduces speed limits, also reduces collision on a piece of roadway, but also it provides the opportunity for people to be able to make a left turn into their driveways or side streets safely without having somebody coming up at them at a high speed rate and so on and so forth. So basically the way that they are constructed is you have two solid lines on the outer edge and you have dotted lines on the inner edge. And a lot of people are questioning, well, how come a solid line? Well, through the Transportation Association in Canada, or actually in North America or throughout the world, those are how they are painted. And basically a solid layout line means that you can't take somebody over or pass someone, but you can cross that line to drive safely to make a left turn onto another roadway, but it's not to overtake another vehicle. And that's one of the issues with respect to the two-way left turn is we have to make sure that the people understand and the public understand that they're not made to pass vehicles and they're not made to also drive through lane and stay in that lane. Basically here we have a few things here. Allow left turning vehicles to safely exit driving lanes and wait for a gap opposing traffic. Basically, if there's a gapping opportunity, then you can safely make that turn. And I also stress safely. Anytime that you're driving a vehicle, it doesn't matter if it's on a 4-lane, on a 5-lane, or 2-way lane traffic, when you are passing someone, when you are changing lanes, you must do so safely. And this is the same thing when you get into a two-way left turn. You must do also safely. Vehicles from every direction can make the left turn, and yes, that is correct. So when you want to make the decision to make your left turn, you have to make it to do it safely as do so. But what it is you have a respect where if, I think Art was saying earlier, when you see another oncoming vehicle, both of them have that respect, whoever is going to make the left turn first, and then the next vehicle makes the turn. It has been proven, and I'll show that in case studies, with respect to reducing collisions and protecting left turn vehicles. It does maintain traffic flow while slowing down traffic, and that is the case. We did a study last year on Salisbury Road, the 85th percentile, meaning that 85% of the vehicles are traveling at a certain speed and lower, and that was 85 kilometers per hour. We did another 2 surveys last week. It dropped down to 65 kilometers an hour. So we dropped it down by 20 kilometers an hour. Why is that important? The severity of the collision. If you have a collision at 85 kilometers an hour, it's a lot different than at 65 kilometers an hour. So that's why, yes, we're going to try to reduce collisions, but if a collision happens, it is not as severe. And again, the point I like to make, it's only for left turning vehicles and not for a lane or for passing. How do you get into a left turn lane? Basically, you decelerate before the markings. You can do that a few hundred feet before. Enter the center lane a few hundred feet before and make the left turn as long as it's clear and safe. Basically, when we look at road safety, it's the responsibility of everybody. Motorists, cyclists, pedestrian, roadway authority, police, and the general public. If we can understand roadway safety and the responsibility of the roadway, we can make our roads very safe. I'd like to go through a little bit of roadway safety when it comes to maybe cyclists, and also it's not just for bike lanes. You got to remember, we've had bike lanes in our community now for the last 5 years. So bike lanes in our community are not new, and then cycling on street is not new. But for cyclists, it's important, it's very important that you maintain a roadworthy vehicle. It's no different than a motor vehicle. It has to be in good working condition. Yes, it is law to wear a bike helmet, People do choose not to wear them. It's the same thing as people choose not to wear seatbelts. And that's that's an individual making a decision on their own behalf, and it's a safety concern for them, but it is law to wear a helmet, as it is wearing a seatbelt. Respect traffic control devices. We heard it just earlier tonight. People are going through red lights, stop signs. Cyclist has to follow the same rules of the road as a motor vehicle. You must stop at a stop sign, you must stop at a stoplight, and you must respect the rules of the road, and you must respect other users. Visible clothing. You should always have visible clothing during the day, but especially at night, you should have reflective clothing. And also at night, you should have a headlight and a rear illuminated red light. During the day, you can have reflectors and so on, but if you are going to be a commuter and riding during the evening, it's really, really important that you have the appropriate gear and the appropriate accessories on your bicycle. Continuing with cyclists, proper hand signals is the most important thing with respect to a cyclist, because that's how you communicate with the motorists and other individuals. Ride on the right next to the curb with traffic. And it is important, you always must ride with traffic, not against traffic. Motorists really don't feel comfortable when somebody's coming at them head-on with respect to the side of the road. You have to ride on the same side of the road as cyclists, or as motor vehicles. Respect other road users, and that's really true. You respect pedestrians and you respect the other vehicles, motor vehicles. And then be predictable. And that's very, very important. When I say being predictable is using your hand signals and so on. And here's a couple of items with respect to hand signals. I mean, we've all seen this. We've grown up with it, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves that if you want to make a left turn, you always use your left hand. They always say, the experts, is you try to get comfortable riding with one hand and use your left turn for all your signals. So you have your left, you have your right, you want to stop. And also you can use your right hand to make a right turn, but we suggest that you should use your left hand. There's a website out there called roadid.com. It's just a website through Tour de France, but they have great videos with respect to respecting the road, road safety for cyclists, and road safety for motorists. And I encourage the public to just go see that. We'll put it on our website as a link to just show the public that here are good tools for education and awareness. With respect to the motor vehicle has to respect the bike lane. And I'll go through a little bit of the questions, and there were great questions with respect to school buses and transit buses, and also people making deliveries and so on and so forth. Cyclists are entitled to their share of the road just as motor vehicles. And it is not the cyclist's responsibility to get out of the way of a driver if a cyclist is legally occupying the lane. It is not. It is the motor vehicle's responsibility. When approaching a cyclist, prepare to overtake, slow down, and just as you would as any other vehicle. So basically, if you're going to overtake a cyclist, you do it safely and making sure everything is clear. Assess the situation, make sure that there's safe passage, and then do not honk the horn. And it's a lot of people say that when you're a cyclist, if you honk the horn, you'll kind of startle the cyclists. They know you're there, they can hear you, and they're always looking back. And also, again, respect the roadway. It's the responsibility of all users to make sure that we respect the roadway and other users. And one of the things I like to bring up is there were some questions with respect to emergency vehicles. What do I do if I come up with an emergency vehicle with respect to the dual left turn lanes? Well, you do it like anything else, anytime else. You pull over. And you are allowed to pull over in the bike lane because it's an emergency vehicle. You do it as safe, and you make sure that there's no cyclists. Cyclists have to pull over also when there's an emergency vehicle, so you have to do that. What happens if the transit buses are allowed to pull into the bus lanes? That's a fact, and that's known. And what they do is they'll pull over and pick up their ride, and people can go by them, but they have to do it safely. It's no other time that if somebody's pulling up in a 4-lane roadway, you just know to pull out in the other lane. You got to make sure that it's safe to do so. And it's the same thing with a three-way roadway. When it comes to school buses they will stop. You have to stop for school buses when they put their red lights on. When they pull out and when they see there's a long lineup, they will pull over. They do it on Elmo Drive. They do it on all other two-way streets. They will pull over safely into the bike lane, and they'll let that car go by. You're allowed to pull by them. I'm just going to continue my presentation. And then I believe there was another one with respect to parking on the road. Well, both of those streets, Shediac Road and Salisbury Road, is no parking. So you're not allowed to park on the street. However, if you have people coming in to do your lawn and so on and so forth, I encourage you to get them to pull into your driveway. Mail delivery, what will happen is they'll probably pull over on the side of the bike lane. Cyclists will have to go around them, but they're not there often. They're there every day, but they can still be passed. They're very small vehicles. Road lane configuration. Converting a 4-lane divided roadway to 2-lane plus a 2-way left turning lane by moving a travel lane in each direction. Basically, we call that a road diet, and this is nothing new. This is all over the world, everywhere. It's all over New Brunswick. You go to Caracat, you go to St. John, you go to various communities in Halifax, around Halifax. They all have this. They've done it. Basically, the remaining roadway width can be converted to a bike lane or a walkway. But the thing is the main aspects of these roads, and working with this community for many, many years, the number one complaint or concern that we received for Salisbury Road and Shediac Road was speeding. The people that lived on those roads constantly emailed us with respect, there are speeding on these roads, can you do something? We've tried a lot of things. We've reduced the speed limit, but if you have a roadway that has tremendous capacity but low traffic volumes, what will happen is your prudent drivers will not be able to take over from the imprudent drivers. And what happens is the imprudent drivers will speed. By converting the roadway from a 4-way to a 3-way, the prudent driver takes over the roadway, and then you're going back to the speed limit. It's done throughout the world in the city, and I'd like to show you, this is just a typical configuration with the solid lines. Like I said, it is very important when you are using the 2-way left turn that you safely turn into the lane to make your left turn. And it's no different than if you're passing a vehicle on a 4-lane roadway, you have to do it safely. Road diet. The benefits includes reduced vehicle speeds, improved mobility and access, reduced collisions and injuries, and improved livability and quality of life. And they do that. And I'll be able to show you a few case studies here that have been done in other cities in North America where it's brought the quality of life of the residents, the people that live off that roadway, but even for all users, cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists. Here's a couple of cities I'd like to bring up. There's several other ones that we highlighted. These ones are cities that are really typical to what we have here in Moncton for streets, where they've converted a 4-lane roadway to a 3-lane with bike lanes. Vancouver, Washington, Athens, Georgia, and Lexington, Kentucky. In Vancouver, Washington, the roadway was 17,000 vehicles a day on the roadway. In 2002, they reconfigured it to a 2-lane with a center lane. Based on the statistics since then, crashes were reduced by 52%, and then the speeds have gone down by 18%. People, I've stated, everything feels safe and safer. Here's the one before. This is the 4th Plain Boulevard in Vancouver, Washington. You can see all the traffic and really not a defined area for a cyclist. And then today. Also a different angle from the plane or the 4th Plain Boulevard, and then today. So you see more people walking on the street, because the walker also feel more comfortable on walking with a buffer between the driving lane and so on. Athens, Georgia, Baxter Street, 20,000 vehicles a day. It was reconfigured in 1999. Crashes also reduced by 53%. And vehicle speeds were reduced by 18%. Again, the street felt safer and friendlier. Here's an example of before of the street, and then today the same. Lexington, Kentucky, 20,000 vehicles a day again. And when I say 20,000 is, we really didn't reduce the capacity of these roadways by reducing it to 3 lanes, because the major issue with capacity on roadways are usually intersections and left turning traffic into and out of driveways or intersections. So basically they've done this in 2002, and now, again, they've reduced vehicle speeds, and then no increase in congestion, and again the street felt safer for everybody. And here is an example of the roadway before and then one after. No different than what we've done on Salisbury Road or Shady Neck Road. I'd like to show you a little video on the gentleman that basically came up with the road diet configuration, and it's only about 2 or 3 minutes, but it really gives you an idea of what other communities are doing throughout the world. And we're not the only ones doing it, and it's nothing new.
A road diet is any time we take any lane out of a road. If you have, say, 4 lanes and you knock it down to just 2 lanes, you've put the road on a diet. I first coined the phrase and used it in 1996 in an article that Peter Lagerwey and I wrote together. It had sticking power. People liked the term. They could understand what it meant. The most common road diet is converting 4 lanes to 2 and then putting in the 3rd lane for turning. And then, with the extra space, adding in bike lanes.
It's a way to reallocate space so the street performs more efficiently. And it also allows space to be allocated for bicycle pedestrian measures. As a motorist, you have fewer lane changes, and you now have a dedicated left turn pocket. So when you want to make a left turn, you have the space to do that, and you don't feel any pressure from behind to hurry up. And that improves safety for the motorists and for pedestrians who are crossing the crosswalks.
We've reallocated the space in the street to accommodate those that live here, that work here, that buy things here, versus privileging those that would just drive through here fast. We used to have a sidewalk where the curb went right through here. We extended it all the way out, so we still have through 2-car travel lanes here, but we shortened the distance for pedestrians by about 50%.
When you have a road diet, typically you have 1 lane in each direction. And now the prudent driver is setting the speed and not the imprudent driver. So crashes come down. Another real benefit is that it makes it much easier to get across the street. If you're a pedestrian, you end up with less distance to cross. It's quieter, and you end up with more people walking and bicycling. We typically see more people socializing. And generally, we see the value of properties going up. One city that's way out in front of other cities is San Francisco.
San Francisco is up to about 40 road diets, which I believe is the most of any North American city. We have all sorts of road diets where we went from 4 lanes to 3, 3 to 2. We are working on one that goes from 6 to 4. Back in the 1990s, Valencia Street was a 4-lane roadway, and the Bicycle Coalition in particular wanted to have a bicycle facility on the street because it was already very heavily used by bicyclists. So the bike lanes went in as a trial. We went from 4 to 3 lanes with bike lanes, and there was a report written after 1 year. We found that the number of cyclists increased by about 140%, and we were finding that the merchants along the roadway were actually very open to the idea of keeping the road diets.
After the road diets go in, because motorists are driving more prudent, people can shop for parking spaces, and the retail life of the street also improves. So the businesses typically do better after a road diet. To a lot of people, it's a surprise if you take half of something away, the number of lanes, that you actually end up with more performance for a street. And it just simply gets right down to the crunching the numbers. In science, if you have fewer of something, it can be more efficient.
Road diet is one of the most cost-efficient ways to improve a roadway. You can do a mile of roadway for about $50,000, which is the cost of one sidewalk bulb out. Or to compare it, a traffic signal could cost $300,000 or $400,000.
So we're in New Haven looking at some roadways that were way overbuilt. We got, as you can see, the roads empty a lot of the time. And then all of the space in between these 2 roads on either side was at one time all housing. And they bulldozed all of it in order to put a freeway in. Well, the freeway never came, never will come. And now we still have these very fast, very wide streets, Earlier, we were recording some cars that going 50 miles an hour down this corridor. One major reason for road diets is safety. We've had several people killed within a block of right where we're standing now, doctors who work here in the hospital. So we're really looking at all the ways we can get out those lanes we no longer need, which when you have too many lanes, you induce more speeding and more risky behavior. As we're making a move back to cities, as people want to live more and more in cities, so many of the streets in our cities, 30, sometimes 40% of the streets could operate better with fewer lanes. And otherwise, change the street back to a quieter version of its former self. And it's working.
That's just a little snippet of what you're seeing out there in the industry, that this is nothing new, but I think it's new for the community. And Paul had brought it up earlier. Education is key, and provide information to the public via the media, via our website, is to continue educating our public with respect to rules of the road, but also as users to share the roadway. Thank you. Any questions?